So this is one topic that I have been thinking about for quite a while. This little stupid pink worm here is responsible for catching so many fish all around the country. Pros have one tied on, I guarantee you, 100% of the time, no matter where they're at, whether they're fishing Florida, if they're fishing Texas, Alabama, if they're fishing up north, New York, doesn't matter. They all have one of these stupid pink worms on all the time, right? So why does it work so well? That is one of the questions that I've asked myself for quite a while, and I have gone down the rabbit hole. I have figured out a lot of different things about this worm. First off, it's very simple. This is a 6-inch straight tail worm. There are many like it, but this one can be yours. This is actually Missile Bait's magic worm, and this isn't a commercial for Missile Bait's magic worms. We just got these in, so I wanted to tell you about them. These work with robo worms. Zoom makes one that's similar. Any open pore style worm. Why is it so effective, and how can you modify your drop shot rig? The drop shot by far is the best technique in my opinion for something like this. I'm going to teach you some of my personal secrets about how to modify your drop shot rig. And I've done a video similar to this, but this gives it all away. Trust me guys, stay tuned. Let's talk about this little pink worm and how I like to fish them. Now I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the drop shot is revolutionary, that you just need to be throwing it all the time. No, there are certain times of the year where the drop shot is most effective. There are certain ways to modify the drop shot, which we're going to be getting into later in this video on ways to increase the number of fish that you put in the boat or on the bank or in the kayak, no matter what. There's so many different things you can do with this very simple rig. It's a hook, it's a bait, and it's a sinker. Guys, just like almost any other rig out there, there are so many ways you can modify this to do exactly what you need them to do, depending on the time of the year, but more specifically in the summertime. We're gonna be talking about ways to target the fish, ways to get these fish to eat, not just with forward-facing sonar, but it sure does help. We're gonna mention it, and we're gonna talk all about the drop shot here and the stupid pink worm. Why does it work so well? Oh, I do want to say the drop shot has been perfected pretty well over the past couple of years, and the pink worm specifically has really started to take the scene the last, let's say, 7-8 years. Really, this morning dawn color really started and taken to a new height by Robo Worm, Aaron Martins. The pink, as the fish look at it in the water, of course, they don't see a lot of red and green tones in their sight. What's really amazing about the pink worm here is it's very translucent. So it is a very finessey worm. You can still throw it in darker water, especially if you have a hit of purple or you have a hit of brown or even white in there. It is really just as finessey as you can get. Whether it's trying to imitate a shad or a bluegill, it really just depends when it comes to something like this. Now this worm specifically is the Missile Bait's Magic Worm 6-inch. It has a couple extra ribs. It allows you to get a little more action out than a standard straight tail 6-inch. But when it comes to the morning dawn color, I don't know why it works. It just seems to get bit all around the country. We just got back, of course, from Lake Chickamauga. Water was pretty clear, and the fish really ate this bait here about 2-to-1 compared to a normal green pumpkin worm. So whatever it is, it seems to be working. Let's focus on some of the things that you can do in your day-to-day to modify your drop shot. Of course, again, it's only 3 components. Well, I guess 4 components. You got your line, you got your weight, and you got your hook, and you got your worm. Let's talk about the different configurations on how to effectively fish your drop shot around certain types of cover all year this summer. All right, so like I said, I'm not going to be focusing specifically too much on the rod, the reel, anything like that. But guys, when I'm setting my drop shot up, of course, I'm going to tie a leader to it. I like going braid to leader, about 10-pound line to a fluorocarbon leader, and it really just depends on how you want your bait to fall. It depends on what cover you're fishing your bait through. Typically, I'm starting with a 1/4 ounce weight for my standard weight. Typically going to be lead because I do break a lot of these off just because of the places I'm putting this rig, right? You can fish it through brush pretty effectively. You can fish it through rock. There are certain areas that the bait gets caught up a little more, but overall, in terms of any situation you're in, the drop shot can pretty well cover it. All right, so let us start with the standard rigging of a drop shot. So when it comes to the drop shot, guys, Most people will start off by nose hooking their bait, just like this, where the hook point comes out of the bait, just fully exposed, and they only set that bait about, an eighth of an inch into that worm. This is going to give the worm the most side-to-side action. It allows the bait to really swing on the hook, opening up the entire worm. And for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to be focused on straight shank hooks like a rebarb hook or something like that. This is going to be purely with a drop shot, just kind of standard finesse hook. Specifically, the one I use is going to be the spear point hooks, GP finesse. You can see the V-bend in that hook there. What that is going to do is allow that fish, as it pulls, it's going to drive the barb and the point of the hook back into the fish's mouth. So my hookup to land ratio with these hooks is literally like 99.9%. If I do have any failures, it's typically in the line where they get me snagged up in a chain or something really sharp and pop me off that way. But with the V-grip technology from Spearpoint, guys, I am telling you, you just do not lose fish. So, the standard rigging, again, is going to be going straight through the nose of the plastic. The way you rig it, very, very simple. Nothing to it. It is the most basic way to rig a worm. Now, when it comes to throwing this around certain types of cover, especially wooded cover where you have limbs going every which way and you have a lot of snaggy potential, this isn't the best option. Your hook point is exposed, and with very good drop shot hooks, that hook point is offset from the line tie, allowing for maximum hookup percentage. And that is one of the key things that I like to avoid, is getting snagged up, because it's no fun. I don't like losing my rigs, because when you do, you usually lose the hook, you lose the weight, you lose the bait, right? So my go-to way, probably 70 to 80% of the time on rigging this, is actually going to be texposing your lure from the bottom. So again, we're going to be sticking with this stupid looking pink worm here. What I'm going to be doing is rigging this from the bottom of the worm. So I'm going to find a good center point about ½ an inch back in the worm here. I'm going to take the point, go straight up just a little bit, and I'm going to curve it into the core of the worm. And the thing you have to realize about most drop shot baits out there on the market is that they are extremely soft. Think about it this way, guys. If you're setting the hook into a fish's mouth, you really don't have to go through that much plastic compared to a Texas rig or something thicker like that, maybe like a swim bait that has a buried hook. So, and the nice thing about drop shot hooks is they're typically very, very thin. So you don't, again, that hook doesn't have to try very hard to get through the plastic. Rigging up like this, again, is one of my favorite ways to rig it up. It is weedless. I can push that point there where that point is, and it's not going to get snagged on anything. I have about another 1/8 inch of plastic where you'd normally nose hook your bait that covers my hook point. So I can push that all I want. It's not going to get snagged. 99% of the time when I do get snagged, it's my weight falling in a crevice or something like that, getting snagged up that way. But this way, I just do not get snagged up. And I'm telling you, with this V-grip, as you can see here, that V-grip actually holds that worm up very, very well. And this is going to be one of my ways that I like to throw in timber. I like to throw in very snaggy cover, whether it's a brush pile. Again, timber is typically going to be the main way I like to throw this. And even if it's open water, this is going to be a great way to basically stabilize your worm. You're not pulling a lot of action out of the worm. You're not going that deep into it. You can still see it sits very, very limp even in the air. Obviously in the water, it's going to sit a little bit higher like this, and it still gives you a very good flowing action as you shake this worm. You have a lot of control over the worm, whether your hook point is going to be sitting like this, or if you're jigging your worm. If you want to pull your rod up, it's going to fly up and it's going to go back down. And that leads me into my next topic here. One of the biggest and best ways you can get a lot of bites in the summertime is going to be threading the worm on, right? So if you're not fishing around heavy cover, if you're fishing around a flat bottom, if you're fishing around riprap, threading the worm onto your hook is another great option. So what I'm going to be doing, just like I would any soft body swim bait, you're going to take the point, stick it in the nose, go down about, I don't know, quarter of an inch, maybe basically 3/4 of an inch. This time, the worm is actually going to stick down, and your hook point is extremely exposed, right? So this is going to be that open water situation. What's great about this option here is when I'm typically fishing riprap or I'm fishing a area that has a lot of bottom cover, like gravel or something like that, typically I am working this worm a lot higher. I'm pulling my rod tip up, everything flies up, my drop shot weight goes down, hits the bottom, and I'm repeating the process. And this really allows that worm to get a full maximum amount of action while maintaining a very streamlined profile. This technique here isn't new. A lot of people do this one with straight shanks. I just don't like a straight shank hook. It really opens up the door for a lot of mishooks. With that longer shank hook, sometimes they get it sideways. A lot of the time they go for the head, and that's why I like going with as small a hook as possible. Now, the hook I'm using in this video is actually a 1/0 hook, so almost the biggest they make, I believe. Typically, I am using a size 3, which is absolutely minuscule compared to this little 1/0 here. As you can see, I'm going to pull this worm off for you, and you'll see the difference, right? So one is definitely going to be a much more meatier hook like that, right? So maybe you can't see it on my black shirt, but there's that. And then there's that one, right? So big difference. And that all just comes down to hookup ratio. I know how to play my fish. I've got great reels that have a great drag on them. And there's a lot of situations where it calls for a bigger hook sometimes, yes. But also I love being able to play the fish. I love the fight. That's just something I enjoy. You don't have to do it. So trust me on this one, guys. Start at like a size 1, maybe a size 2. And then if you really like getting finessey on them, go to a size 3. Let's talk about another way that I like to rig the baits and another strength of going back to the bottom hook, right? So let's just call it the bottom hook where you go through the bottom. Another way I really like to do this is actually putting it about 2 times farther back than I normally would. So again, normally I'm going to go about 1/2 inch back and then leave about 1/4 inch in that worm to protect the hook point. Another way I like to rig it is going to be go even farther back, go about 1 inch back into the worm. And this time, I'm going to be rigging it up just far enough to where that worm goes about to your knot, right? If you're using a smaller hook, you won't go back that far. But if you're using a little bit bigger hook like this, or if you're using any other hook on the market there, you can go back and you see how much worm is sticking off the front point of that hook. Again, the way good drop shot hooks are designed is for that hook point to hook a fish in any direction, right? No matter how they grab the worm. What this is going to do, 2 things, right? 2 things this is going to do. First off, it's going to protect your hook very well. It's going to make your worm sit a little bit farther back, so a little bit more of it is going to have less action. So you're diminishing a little bit of action when you're just sitting there, right? Slowly shaking just your rod tip. If you go back to the lifting method, what this does is absolutely incredible. And you can modify it how you want. You can twist your hook angle. So instead of having the bait sit completely straight, you can offset it, angle it from right to left. And what that is going to do is something extremely, extremely cool. In the water, what this is going to do, if you raise your rod tip up, that worm flies up, and it starts going back down, that little kink in that extra plastic here acts as a rudder, and the higher you bring it up, the more rotation it's going to have. So as you bring it up and it goes back down, it is going to spiral back down, and you can really pinpoint, especially if you're using forward-facing sonar in a brush pile or on a tree. This thing will just kind of spiral down as it goes. And if you use a lighter weight, that is even more enhanced. If you have a heavier weight, it's going to fall a lot faster and kind of spin on you just a little bit. If you have a lightweight, this is one of my secret techniques that I have been smashing fish on the past couple summers. And when it gets very, very tough, guys, it is a absolute game changer. So don't be afraid to leave a little bit of worm hanging out in front of your hook here. Again, I'm going to go straight into that worm. I'm going to bring it about where it sits on that knot. Don't even worry about it. It is just a guaranteed fish catching machine. Now you can you can rig it up however you want, play with it. I have found that with lighter line, it doesn't, it doesn't really change a whole lot. When you have a lot heavier line, there's going to be a little more drag in the water. So as you're pulling it along and shaking it, you don't have to impart that much action for it to really do stuff. The more action you put on lighter line, the more it is enhanced, just because there's less drag, it's less stiff. One of my go-tos is going to be the Seaguar Grand Max. The 10-pound is very standard, but if I really enjoy fishing around the brush where I know I'm going to get bit. And with this technique, guys, little stupid pink looking worm here in a drop shot, fishing around the brush, fishing around timber, fishing around heavily covered areas, especially vegetation, I'm going to be using probably 15-pound of Braze X. That line is extremely supple, extremely abrasion resistant. I can bring it through grass. I can bring it through just about anything, and it is my go-to for heavier cover. Now, if the fish are a little pressured, definitely go down line sizes. I think people definitely underestimate the true breaking strength of their line, and they don't trust it that much, right? And I think that's one thing as anglers that we have to get over at a certain point, because it really, 15-pound line will break around 17 to 20 even sometimes, depending on your line. So just wanted to talk about the drop shot a little bit. Again, it caught a lot of fish on this worm right here. I actually got some prototypes for the Chickamauga tournament for the boys here, and they absolutely smashed them on some of these techniques. And again, I don't talk about it a lot. It is not something I like sharing, but I figured since we've got such an amazing Lake Pro Tackle family going on here, that y'all deserve to know this knowledge. So go pick up some of these magic worms. They are extremely amazing. The 6-inch is going to be a 14-pack, and this is a brand new color. This is very similar to like a Martin's Madness. This is called Missile Morning. They also have two really amazing clearer watercolors that will work in dirty water. They've got Alabama Brim and Bleeding Shad. If you've got a lot of forage in your lake, Bleeding Shad is going to be my go-to. If you've got a little bit darker water and you like fishing Green Pumpkin Gold already, like Green Pumpkin Magic, which is one of my favorite colors, yeah, I highly recommend fishing Alabama Brim for a little bit darker water. As those bluegill and crappie start to get out to those piles, they're going to darken up a little bit, and that is a perfect representation of that. So guys, I hope you enjoyed. Again, check out Spear Point hooks, check out Missile Bait Magic Worms, and more specifically, this weight right here is a tungsten weight. It is 1/8 of an ounce. I typically will bounce between 1/8 and 1/4. I really don't have an in-between. Lead is perfectly fine. You know, fishing tungsten can get expensive, especially if you're breaking them off. But guys, I'm telling you, give these tips a try. Play with your hook placement, play with how you throw your drop shot, and do not be afraid to stick it in that heavy cover with these techniques. Yes, you will lose some hooks, you'll lose some weights, you'll lose some baits, but I guarantee you, you will get on fish. So guys, give it a try. Thank you so much for watching. Keep up with the social media, and we will see you next time at Lake Pro Tackle. See you guys.